The Oxford English Dictionary defines conspiracy theory as the theory that an event or phenomenon occurs as a result of a conspiracy between interested parties, specifically a belief that some covert but influential agency, typically political in motivation and oppressive in intent, is responsible for an unexplained event. Since, without question, major events of the last 2 decades have, undeniably and in fact, been the product of groups conspiring for covert aims, this slur conspiracy theory should be abandoned as a dismissive culling term to extricate logical arguments from the bondage of blunt objects contained in ad hominem and straw man arguments against certain beliefs. For instance, if the $1 bill contains the arcane Novus Ordo Seclorum, which translates to New Order of the Ages, it is safe to assume that this message upon the basic currency is a signifier for some group aim outside of the average person who exchanges them, and, without question, a conspiracy. Like the racist, misogynist, or homophobic dismissive language of previous decades of American history, the average person rarely evaluates language in the present, but rather very easily condemns stereotype and slur posthumously. Being that the term conspiracy theory itself was created by the CIA to dismiss arguments against the Warrant Commission regarding the assassination of John F. Kennedy, it already has, itself, roots in a conspiracy. When the unwashed masses look for someone to blame for lowered standards of living or their life not turning out the way they had wanted, intellectuals are usually the first target. Being that conspiracy theories generally take deeper understanding that is available in a 30-minute sitcom TV show or 3-minute song, they threaten and challenge the comfort zone of the average consumer, and are subsequently easily dismissed, if the culture warrants denigration. For example, the project for a new American century called for regime change in Iraq as early as 1998, yet, when world events justify invasion of Iraq years later, it seems as though the narrative was forged as a response. This is, literally, conspiracy, and the theory part is merely a derogative dismissal. Undeniably, there was a conspiracy to invade Iraq long before 9/11. What side of history do you think one is on, when they deride the people who point this reality out as conspiracy theorists? It's just a modern tool of oppressive speech permitted by an ignorant status quo to inadvertently submit to narratives provided by the powers that be. The official narrative of everything from the JFK assassination to 9/11 to the moon landing is so full of holes and half-truths that presuming that there are no conspiring groups telling the general public fictions to control narratives is a downright scary level of willful ignorance. If your worldview is so thin that possible narratives threaten you, there is no way that probable narratives aren't getting past you. If you understand that the Federal Reserve controls interest rates, then you should be able to understand that at least one conspiracy theory is completely accurate, in that the Federal Reserve caused the financial crisis, and has caused many others. The consumption-based culture can be turned off overnight, as it was during the Great Depression, when so-called conspiracies abounded, especially the now distasteful anti-Semitic ones. What sociological conflict theory will teach us is that the dominant group decides what is reality for the subordinate group. To acquiesce power, itself, is an extension of privilege that diminishes its returns into an endgame of altruism, which serves very little purpose in a post-religious society. The acquiescence of privilege is, undoubtedly, part of a conspiracy, as in a group conspiring towards certain aims. Very little privilege is recognized down the barrel of a gun. It's merely a theoretical substance that can be negotiated, and for it to be brought to heel, requires an academic tone and a disparaging continuum of belief. Take a look at this obviously staged footage from the First Gulf War.
Given these restrictions, but within those parameters, what did you see? Well, what I saw, I didn't see anything hit. I looked very almost straight above us. There's a vapor trail coming from my right to my left, and there's a cloud of something. It looks like it might have been an explosion of cloud. The white city. My apologies for please putting on a gas mask. There hasn't been any gas dropped here that we could tell.
These CNN reporters want you to believe that they are in Saudi Arabia during the First Gulf War, and that a gas mask and an army helmet will somehow protect them from Scud missile attacks. There is an air raid siren to complete the illusion. Since the moon landing allegedly happened in 1969, and requires going beyond low Earth orbit, why then are these astronauts at the International Space Station, which is in low Earth orbit and not beyond it as the moon is, confused about if NASA has or has not sent people beyond it?
Pushing the boundaries in terms of where we're going forward with exploration. I think humans are naturally driven to do this, and this is really the beginning, I think, of human beings leaving low Earth orbit. I certainly plan on being around to see that.
The plan that NASA has is to build a rocket called SLS, which is a heavy lift rocket. It's something that is much bigger than what we have today, and it will be able to launch the Orion capsule with humans on board, as well as landers or other components to destinations beyond Earth orbit. Right now, we only can fly in Earth orbit. That's the farthest that we can go. We only can fly in Earth orbit. That's the farthest that we can go. And this new system that we're building is going to allow us to go beyond and hopefully take humans into the solar system to explore. So the moon, Mars, asteroids, there's a lot of destinations that we could go to, and we're building these building block components in order to allow us to do that eventually.
Go to the moon in a nanosecond. The problem is we don't have the technology to do that anymore. We used to, but we destroyed that technology, and it's a painful process to build it back again.
If the 2012 Sandy Hook school shooting was absolutely real and not a conspiracy, why does this Sandy Hook father claim, quote, "I held my son with a bullet through his head," when none of the Sandy Hook parents were anywhere near their children before, during, or after the shooting, according to every single report?
Then, last year, Neil Heslin went on television to directly address the Sandy Hook deniers.
I lost my son. I buried my son. I held my son with a bullet hole through his head.
That is not possible.
The Challenger space shuttle exploded in midair on January 28, 1986, allegedly killing all crew members on board. The incident was watched in every classroom and covered in a multitude of ways throughout media.
Jean-Michel Jarre, a friend of Challenger astronaut Ronald McNair, played a saxophone solo McNair himself intended to play during the doomed mission. The track would go on to be sampled in the music of Frank Turner, Adam Young, John Denver, and even Beyoncé.
The brave, wonderful people who were aboard the Challenger space shuttle. It's called Flying for Me.
The disaster was also acknowledged in the scripts of then popular television shows like Punky Brewster and Star Trek: The Next Generation.
We were watching the space shuttle take off. It exploded.
Around 2013, people started to realize that the official story of the Challenger did not add up. There was an analogous person for each crew member who was alive and well, and almost all working as professors. When approached, the similar people had the disposition of members of the Witness Protection Program.
A part of the team, even though she was not a trained astronaut.
She knows where we're going to be standing, how busy it's going to be, where she can help, where we need our space. And she has learned an awful lot and become a team
weird lady with scale and swords and blindfolds, or Grecian goddess, or warrior princess, or whatever it is. What makes it legible? And so one of the questions in the book is to puzzle about both its history and the legibility of this, which is a marker, and of course this local county court.
Part of the team, even though she was not a trained astronaut.
She knows where we're going to be standing, how busy it's going to be, where she can help, where we need our space. And she has learned an awful lot and become a team member.
When she's approached, she has a very odd way of not responding.
Hey, Judy? How you doing? I'm from the press. I just had a quick question, if you don't mind.
What press?
From a radio station in San Bernardino. I know there's a conspiracy about the space shuttle. No, I want to be polite. Friendly. Just a question. So there's a lot of rumors about you being on that space shuttle. Obviously, you know, if you want to comment, we would really appreciate it.
Kind of odd that Judith is in full panic mode when realizing the press is in her presence. She's no stranger to being in the spotlight. She even made her way into Hollywood for a quick cameo.
If the choice is to allow Americans to be taken as hostages or to be executed, I'll bring my own rope. Saddam backed down, and Ambassador Wilson helped thousands get safely home. When he himself came home to the United States, he was warmly greeted by our president, who took him to the Oval Office and introduced him to the War Cabinet as an American hero.
So this Judith Resnick, who happens to look, sound, and be the same age as that Judith Resnick, refuses to answer questions about it, but is both a professor and coincidentally an actor.
The teacher who will be going into space, Krista McAuliffe. Is that you? Krista teaches in Concord High School in Concord, New Hampshire. She teaches high school social studies. She's been teaching for 12 years.
I've made 9 wonderful friends over the last 2 weeks. And when that shuttle goes, they might be one body. But there's going to be 10 souls that I'm taking with me. Thank you.
That's great.
Krista McAuliffe, the teacher on board, was handpicked by George Bush. The same George Bush that was an ex-head of the CIA and Skull and Bones Freemason secret society member. Bush had lied about a great number of incidents, including the circumstances for the first invasion of Iraq.
The story centers on a young Kuwaiti woman named Nayira. On October 10th, 1990, the 15-year-old girl gave riveting testimony before Congress about the horrors inside Kuwait after Iraq invaded.
Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, my name is Nayira, and I just came out of Kuwait. My sister, with my 5-day-old nephew, traveled across the desert to safety. There was no milk available for the baby in Kuwait. They barely escaped when their car was stuck in the desert sand, and help came from Saudi Arabia. I stayed behind and wanted to do something for my country. The second week after invasion, I volunteered at the Al-Adan hospital with 12 other women who wanted to help as well. I was the youngest volunteer. The other women were from 20 to 30 years old. While I was there, I saw the Iraqi soldiers come into the hospital with guns. They took the babies out of the incubators, and left the children to die on the cold floor. It was horrifying. I could not help but think of my nephew.
Nayira's testimony was rebroadcast across the country and marked a turning point in public opinion on going to war. President George H.W. Bush repeatedly cited her claims.
They had kids in incubators, and they were thrown out of the incubators so that Kuwait could be systematically dismantled.
3 months after Nayira testified, President George H.W. Bush launched the invasion of Iraq. But it turned out Nayira's claims weren't true. No human rights group or news outlet could confirm what she said. It also turned out Nayira was not just any Kuwaiti teenager. She was the daughter of the Kuwaiti ambassador to the United States, Saad Nasir al-Sabah. She had been coached by the public relations firm Hill & Knowlton, which was working for the Kuwaiti government.
So a public relations firm, the president, and a daughter of an ambassador all conspired in order to justify invading Iraq the first time. Is alleging a conspiracy theory a right-wing nutjob feat, given these facts? Or is the general public just so stupid and easily led that the powers that be easily exploit their emotions to justify their arcane actions?
When you said that George W. Bush, which was our last Republican president, a man I respect greatly, a person that we really fought for when he was up against a lot of pressure, that he lied to get us in the war in Iraq. That stung me very deeply. I don't believe that. I'm just wondering, given some time passing, perhaps you've rethought that? Would you be willing to rethink that?
Well, a lot of people agree with what I said, and I'm not talking about lying. I'm not talking about not lying. Nobody really knows why we went into Iraq. The Iraqis did not knock down. It was not Saddam Hussein that knocked down the World Trade Center. Okay, that's just.
Once again, the man in the audience is skeptical of voting for Trump because he dares say Bush lied about the premises for invading Iraq. Trump, who won the presidency for the same party as Bush, cannot even give a definitive answer about the Bush lies, for fear of losing public standing. Aaron Russo was a film producer and personal friends with Nicholas Rockefeller of the Rockefeller banking family. In an interview shortly before his death, he details how Nicholas Rockefeller told him that second-wave feminism was a creation of international banking for the purpose of breaking down the family and taxing both sexes.
Well, one of the things they told me was that he was at the house one night, and he would talk, and he started laughing. He said, "Aaron, what do you think women's liberation was about?" And I said, I'm pretty conventional thinking about it at that point. I said, I think it's about women having the right to work, getting equal pay with men, just like they won the right to vote, you know? And he started to laugh. He said, "You're an idiot." And I said, "Why am I an idiot?" He said, let me tell you what that was about. We, the Rockefellers, funded that. We funded women's lib, you know? And we're the ones who got all over the newspapers and television, the Rockefeller Foundation. He says, and you want to know why? He says, there were two primary reasons. And they were, one reason was we couldn't tax half the population before women's lib. And the second reason was, now we get the kids in school at an early age. We can indoctrinate the kids how to think. It breaks up the family. The kids start looking at the state as the family, as the school, as the officials, as their family, not as the parents teaching them. And so those are the two primary reasons for women's lib, which I thought up to that point was a noble thing. You know, when I saw their intentions behind it, where they were coming from when they created it, the thought of it, I saw the evil behind what I thought was a noble venture.
As hard as it is to believe that such a far-reaching movement could be the nefarious plan of international banking cartels there is undeniable proof of this fact, including that Miss Magazine and Gloria Steinem were funded by the Central Intelligence Agency. Similarly, the very plaintiff in the case of Roe v. Wade, the landmark case that established the legality of abortion in the United States, Jane Roe, herself later admitted that she never had an abortion, was coaxed by lawyers into the whole affair, and was afterward pro-life. Still, money and fame-hungry lawyers like Gloria Allred painted the case: either you are with Roe v. Wade, or you are anti-woman.
Most of you won't recognize me or my real name. It's Norma McCourty. I'm also known as Jane Roe, the plaintiff in the Supreme Court case, Roe v. Wade, which legalized abortion in America and changed our nation in an unprecedented way. Back in 1973, I was a very confused 21-year-old with one child and facing an unplanned pregnancy. At the time, I fought to obtain a legal abortion, but the truth be told, I have 3 daughters and have never had an abortion. However, upon knowing God, I realized that my case, which legalized abortion on demand, was the biggest mistake of my life. You see, abortion has eliminated 50 million innocent babies in the U.S. alone since 1973.
Gloria Allred and company exploited, lied about, and made their name off of Norma and her case, and, after the damage had been done, continued to perpetrate a false narrative about abortion that persists to this day. Millions of people believed the Challenger explosion circumstances as reported. Millions do believe the circumstances for the invasion of Iraq. Millions more believe Sandy Hook. A conspiracy theorist is just a person who is interested in dismantling these lies, and to vilify that type of person is simply ignorance and brutish, dim-witted confirmation bias at work.